Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, a game that I feel like I must have spent countless hours on over 20 years ago. Apologies to anyone who took psychic damage from hearing that. And just recently picked up again on Steam after wrapping up my duties over at AGDQ 2024 and grabbing the event bundle over on Humble Bundle. With a strange influx of Chao videos randomly making their way into my Instagram feed, I was looking forward to once again creating a Chao garden, but this time using my adult brain to get things done. Little did I know I'd be putting in way more brain power than I anticipated. Alright, everybody, hold up. Quick creator's note here. From here on out, I'm mostly gonna slow things down. You know, I'm not gonna keep doing the whole meme-tastic. I'm a content creator in 2024 and I'm gonna talk unnaturally fast while doing a bright read so I can cram as much as I can into a clip that's anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds long, because that's all the attention span I can trust people to have. Thing. That's not how I actually talk. The purpose of this video is to educate and inform, and I want to impart this game knowledge in a way that, you know, doesn't overwhelm you and allows you to retain it. This is going to be a more long-form, in-depth, possibly relaxing video, which is honestly more my vibe. If it also happens to entertain any of you, that's great. Let me know if it does. You can leave a comment down below once you've watched the whole thing. Anyway, just wanted to establish that. Thanks for tuning in. I'll drop you off back at the end of that last part of the script. I was looking forward to once again creating a Chao garden, but this time using my adult brain to get things done. Little did I know I'd be putting in way more brain power than I anticipated. Quick sidebar. Do y'all remember when Animal Crossing New Horizons came in from the east like Gandalf at first light on the 5th day to save our sanity after COVID hit and most of us had to stay cooped up inside for a long time? Y'all remember that? As crappy as things were at the time, the power of Animal Crossing really did feel like magic, keeping the darkness at bay for a lot of us. Even though we couldn't physically be together, we came together virtually, and at times the sheer level of coordination we had was just surreal. There'd be times when I looked in on our Discord server and saw what you're seeing on screen right now. Anyway, as a veteran of that series with prior understanding of the mechanics, one of the first things I did in that game was begin breeding flowers in an effort to achieve the vaunted Blue Rose. For those unaware, Nintendo applied real science to their flower breeding mechanics, to the point where using Mendelian genetic crosses and Punnett squares to breed flowers with the correct alleles was necessary if you wanted to breed your own hybrids. Remember high school biology? I sure did. And with some of my friends coming over every day to help me water my flowers, after 22 days, my Blue Rose project was complete. A true testament to just how much thought devs can put into a single side mechanic in a 2020 era video game. So imagine my surprise upon finding out that the devs behind Sonic Adventure 2 Battle's Chao breeding system were smoking the same over 22 years ago. Holy crap, this stuff is more complicated than my 12-year-old self would have ever imagined. I proceeded to spend hours, days even, poring over information on Chao breeding that I never even knew existed before March of 2024. There's seriously some absolute legends out there who've done what they can to document this info. Whereas back when I was a kid, all I had were schoolyard rumors, web forum rumors, and this book, which, needless to say, did not mention the word alleles even once. Before too long, I was applying my newfound game knowledge and on my way to breeding some really cool Chao. But along the way, I became interested in something. While it's relatively easy to understand how to go about breeding your Chao to create one that has S grades across all 5 of its visible stats, when it came to 2 of the invisible stats, specifically luck and intelligence, I noticed that there's no way to increase these grades in vanilla gameplay. Once hatched, these grades are permanent for Chao, meaning that the only way to breed a Chao with the highest grade for these stats would be for them to be a descendant of a Chao that initially hatched with the highest grade. But where could we find such a Chao? None of mine were hatched with the maximum grade. And that's where this research journey truly begins. Yep, this has all been intro spiel. So grab a snack and a drink, sit back, relax those shoulders, and let's talk about Chao. But first, there's some things that you should know. All tests were done using USA versions of all games. However, a brief instance on the Japanese versions indicated the same results. Stats were all viewed and cross-checked using a triple combination of Fruity's SA2 save utility, Chrysistu's Chao editor, and Justin113D's Chao stat menu. GameCube saves were converted by Fruity's SA2 save converter. GameCube and Game Boy Advance saves were run in Dolphin, as well as GBA emulators such as mGBA, where applicable. Shadatics Enhanced Chao World, also known as SECW, was brought into this research from the beginning, will be considered its own version of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and will be noted as such where applicable. Games and versions used and tested were Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for the GameCube, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for Steam, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for Steam modded with SECW, Sonic Advance 1, Sonic Advance 2, and Sonic Pinball Party. Stat grades will always be presented in the order of Swim, Fly, Run, Power, Stamina, Luck, Intelligence, and then 2 lifespan alleles when said stats are relevant. The term First Generation Chao refers to any Chao not obtained through breeding, such as Preset, Black Market, or Tiny Chao Garden Chao. While it's been known that Chao in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle could have the known maximum of 255 luck and intelligence, the only method mentioned on the public-facing internet at large for achieving this through breeding, without using mods or an editor, was simply all Chao from the Tiny Chao Garden will have maxed out luck and intel. Upon seeing this, I began testing to verify this claim, and initially found that this broad statement wasn't true, which sent me down a rabbit hole of checking just how high Chao breeders could legitimately get their Chao's luck and intel stats, depending on which version or versions they had access to. This rabbit hole would thankfully come full circle, weeding out faulty, unverified claims dating back over a decade, as well as correcting my own faulty initial testing and instead honing it to completely replicable results, at least as far as my personal copies of the game go. But along the way, I would also find myself collecting and verifying much more data that seemingly was just never verified, never tested, or never distributed for popular knowledge among the SA2B communities. Hopefully this solves that, because I now know that at least a few people had knowledge of some of my findings, or at least an inkling about some part of it. I'm going to do my best to present these findings in a way that flows naturally, but I know some out there are only here for the original conclusion, so without burying the lead, yes, it's possible to legitimately breed gardens full of Chao that have 255 luck and intel without using mods to alter Chao and without using an editor to alter stat grades. Skip to the appropriate section for the details. Otherwise, here are the findings of my testing and research. As most Chao enthusiasts already know, upon entering the Chao world in Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for the first time, your Chao save data is created, and you are automatically given a total of 4 free Chao eggs spread across the 3 gardens. 2 of the eggs are placed in the Chao Garden, which initially is the only accessible garden. 1 egg is placed in the Hero Garden, and the final egg is placed in the Dark Garden. Regardless of when the hero and dark gardens are unlocked, the eggs placed in them are generated at the same time as the other 2 eggs. In other words, upon save data creation. As many Chao enthusiasts also already know, these initial 4 eggs do not have random stat grades upon hatching. They are instead preset, and will refer to them as such from this point forward, depending on which of the 6 playable characters you first entered Chao World with when your Chao save data was created. What some may not know, however, is that this mechanic is present in all 3 versions of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, those being the GameCube version, the Steam version, also known as the HD version on consoles, and the Steam version when modified using SECW. Furthermore, each version mentioned has its own preset Chao eggs per character. In other words, a Chao Garden initially created with Sonic on the GameCube will have a different 4 preset Chao when compared to a Chao save created with Sonic on the Steam version. And both of those Chao saves will yet still be different when compared to one made with Sonic on the Steam version while using SECW. Now pay attention, because as far as I can tell, less than a handful of people on the internet publicly claim to know this next fact. Did you know that each character has a second set of preset Chao eggs? Well, you do now, because when I stumbled upon this fact completely by accident while performing my other tests in-game, I had to test it and verify it across all 3 versions. Sure enough, this mechanic is present in all of them. In order to quickly access this second set of character preset eggs, the player needs to enter Chao World with any character, hatch their first 2 Chao in the Chao Garden, and then say goodbye to them both via the transporter. After doing so, the player must then save their Chao data and exit Chao World. Once that's done, the player can re-enter Chao World using a character of their choosing, and upon walking back into the Chao Garden, they'll find 2 new eggs inside. As it turns out, all 4 preset eggs, not just the 2 in the Chao Garden, have been repopulated according to the currently used character's second set. I can't claim to know for certain, but basic logic and reasoning as a player tells me that this repopulation occurs as a failsafe mechanic put in place by the developers to ensure that no player would ever be put in a situation where they didn't have access to a Chao to play with. From what I can tell, upon detecting that the current Chao save data has 0 currently accessible Chao or eggs in the unlocked gardens, regardless of ring total, the game will repopulate the gardens with a fail-safe set of eggs, which is what we'll refer to them as going forward. Imagine having a vindictive sibling who went into your Chao Garden while you were away and purposely said goodbye to all of your Chao using the transporter. If this fail-safe mechanic didn't exist, the only way for you to obtain 2-tone normal Chao would be to trade with a friend or to utilize the Tiny Chao Garden shop via GBA linking, neither of which is, at surface level anyway, viable on the HD version of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. As stated, these failsafe sets of 4 eggs will have different preset stat grades than the initial preset's 4 eggs, and they too are character determined. In detailed terms, whichever player character enters Chao World first upon saying goodbye to the other eggs and saving, dictates which failsafe set of eggs is used to repopulate the gardens. Upon testing, there was no instance of a third failsafe set, contradicting a rumor found in a Chao Island forum post from over a decade ago. If a player were to repeat the steps to activate the failsafe set with these eggs, the game would repopulate the gardens with the failsafe set yet again, corresponding to the character used to enter Chao World upon that third iteration. To be absolutely clear, the stat grades of this third set of eggs would be the same as the corresponding character's eggs would have been if that character had been used to activate the first set of failsafe eggs in the first place. Furthermore, once the failsafe set of eggs is activated, despite saying goodbye to them numerous times in testing, the next repopulated eggs never returned to the initial preset eggs, and instead always remained eggs from the failsafe sets, contradicting the previously mentioned forum post as well, which claimed that they would cycle back to the initial preset after the third set. Something to keep in mind when considering which eggs players want to start with. But hang on, There's more that breeders should know before starting their Chao save data. The same Chao enthusiasts who already knew that characters determined the initial preset Chao's stat grades probably also knew that, generally, it's been reported that there are 3 what we'll call character egg groups: Sonic's group, Tails and Eggman's group, and finally, Shadow, Knuckles, and Rouge's group. However, now that we've proved the existence of failsafe sets, these reports are no longer entirely accurate. Through testing across all 3 versions, all of Sonic's initial presets and failsafe sets, totaling 6, 1 initial and 1 failsafe for each version, are unique from the other characters, meaning Sonic indeed always has his own group. Tails and Eggman, across all 3 versions, share the same 6 initial and failsafe sets, confirming that they are still in their own group. Knuckles and Rouge, across all 3 versions, share the same 6 initial and failsafe sets, confirming that they are their own group. Shadow, however, is where we deviate, as although he does share initial preset egg stats with Knuckles and Rouge's group across all 3 versions, all 3 versions of his failsafe sets are unique to him. Ultimately, this means that there being 3 character egg groups is still generally accurate, but not entirely accurate. Either way, we now know all of the possible preset stat grades that we can get from each of the character egg groups. As I was collecting repeat data samples for the preset 4 eggs per character, yes, I took no shortcuts, I really did get multiple samples for each individual character, both initial and failsafe, for all 3 versions of SA2B, I was reminded of something that I had already noticed through normal gameplay. Quite a few of the preset Chao had above normal values for their luck and intelligence grades. But first, for those unaware, let's go over how luck and int grades are indicated and what normal values are. Normally in-game, these 2 stats are invisible, but thanks to previous researchers, we have mods and editors today that we can use to view, and for this case, only view, these stat grades. Many first-generation Chao are shown to only have values of 0 through 5 in luck and int, and when you consider that visible stats all use grades E through S, this makes sense. A 0 grade would be an E, 1 would be D, 2 would be C, 3 would be B, 4 would be A, and 5 would be S. This is already known by quite a few Chao enthusiasts, but if you didn't know, now you know. In fact, through well over 300 egg samples, and that's a low estimate based purely on what I have screen caps of, I can likely count the amount of eggs that had a 5 in luck or int on one hand. Moving on, as mentioned, quite a few of the preset Chao displayed values for luck and int significantly higher than 0 through 5, and as we know, 255 is the highest these values can possibly go. So, before I address the main observation that I began focusing on here, let's ask this question first. With all of the preset Chao's stat grades compiled, how high are we able to get luck and int for our Chao in each version of SA2B? The answers are 16 and 223 on GameCube, and 221 and 198 on Steam, with or without SECW. But as I said, we're not done. Let's move on to the main thing that stood out to me while collecting this data. What had been immediately apparent when I first began gathering preset egg data was which eggs in Chao exceeded the 0 through 5 values for luck and int. Every single one of them hatched with one of each letter grade spread through its visible stats. Henceforth, any first-generation Chao following this pattern will be referred to as an ABC Chao. For example, DCEBA, ACBED, BADEC, etc. And just so you all know, I have it written out as ABCDE Chao, but for, vocal purposes, I'm just going to say ABC Chao. They are the same thing, just letting you know. Upon realizing this, a new question occurred to me. Do black market ABC Chao also exceed normal values for luck and int? So, I began buying batches of black market eggs and recorded the results. But wait, the ABC Chao from this batch all have the same luck and int. What if I use a different character? I gathered more results. But wait, if preset stats change per version, maybe black market egg stats change per version too. And maybe they even change based on which garden they're hatched in. And maybe they change based on which character the Chao save data was started with. And maybe they change based on whether the initial preset eggs or the failsafe set eggs were used. I had a lot more to test, and a lot more data to record. Overall, from start to now as I'm typing this up, my research, testing, and compilation took over a week, usually spending anywhere from 8 to 12 hours per day to ensure variables were covered and tested multiple times to ensure accuracy and replicable results. In the end, testing concluded that which character was used to create the Chao save data did not affect the luck and int of black market ABC eggs, nor did it matter whether the initial preset or the failsafe set eggs were used across all versions. What did matter in some cases was which character was used to purchase and subsequently place the egg inside a garden, and in some cases the determining factor was which of the 3 gardens the egg was initially placed into. Furthermore, in some cases, both of these variables mattered. First, a disclaimer. Throughout testing, every once in a while, an ABC egg or Chao would end up with normal luck and int values in both stats. From recorded samples, this appears to simply be a completely random chance for ABC eggs and Chao across all versions, regardless of character or garden. They do not fit any observed pattern. However, black market eggs as a whole were at times observed to have repeated instances of eggs with the exact same stats as each other, perhaps tied to sessions spent inside Chao World without saving and exiting, after cycling through a number of eggs. This occasionally observed repetition was not investigated further, as, ultimately, it doesn't advance the investigation of luck and int at all, since all it does is take previous black market egg stats and repeat them in possibly cyclical instances when gardens are not a variable. Now, disclaimer aside, on to the results. On both vanilla and SECW Steam versions, all black market ABC Chao, excluding those matching the previous disclaimer, had 1 luck regardless of character used if the egg was initially placed in the Chao garden, 2 luck if initially placed in the Hero Garden, 3 luck if initially placed in the Dark Garden, and had 174 intel regardless of all known variables. This means that for Steam alone, with or without SECW, 221 and 198 are the highest achievable luck and intel grades for Chao breeding, respectively. On the GameCube version, however, results differ. Interestingly, we again see character egg groups come into play, though for black market ABC eggs, the groups differ slightly. Sonic and Shadow are a group, with their black market ABC Chao able to have 0, 64, 128, or 192 luck, and 0 intel, regardless of which garden the eggs were initially dropped in. Those of you keen on numerical patterns might notice one there. Tails has his own group this time, and was in fact the only character observed where a difference occurred based on which garden was used. His black market ABC Chao had 222 luck and 144 intel when the eggs were placed into the Chao garden, 127 luck and 139 intel when placed in the Hero garden, and 206 luck and 54 intel when placed in the Dark garden. Knuckles and Rouge are a group once again. However, unfortunately, their black market ABC Chao came out as 0 and 0, regardless of garden. Finally, Eggman has his own group, and his black market ABC Chao came out 120 and 132, regardless of garden. This means that for GameCube alone, 222 and 223 are the highest achievable luck and intel grades for Chao breeding, respectively. Having by this point been made painfully aware of just how many variables there can be when gathering data, I once again circled back to testing the tiny Chao garden. On the internet, it's claimed that there are 2 versions of the TCG, despite there being 4 different minigames paired with the Chao memory minigame, dependent upon which game the TCG is accessed from, with version 1 being on cartridges of Sonic Advance 1, and version 2 being on Sonic Advance 2 and Sonic Pinball Party. Choosing to trust given information, I revisited, quote, version 2 of the TCG via Sonic Pinball Party, as I no longer trusted my initial results from before I officially began recording my data and being aware of all potential variables. Unfortunately, my results matched what I'd observed initially. Chao hatched inside of Sonic Pinball Party's TCG indeed had 255 luck and intel. However, their alleles did not match, sitting at 0 and 0 for both sets, meaning that any attempts to pass on their luck and int through breeding would be for naught. For the benefit of those unaware, Chao breeding doesn't rely on the visible traits of the 2 Chao used, but rather it relies on 4 normally invisible sets of DNA, 2 per parent Chao, composed of each variable genetic trait, each parent having 2 alleles per genetic trait. This means that each Chao created through breeding has its visible stats as well as its own 2 alleles per trait, determined by the options in those 4 sets. Furthermore, eggs bought from Sonic Pinball Party's TCG and transported to the GameCube gardens and then hatched did not have 255 luck or int in either their stats or alleles. I also repeated these tests using a copy of Sonic Advance 2, however, due to the rather inconvenient requirements for unlocking the TCG in Sonic Advance 2, I borrowed a completed save file of the game in order to run my tests. Unfortunately, while almost all of my testing matched the results of Sonic Pinball Party's TCG, I feel that I have to throw these results out due to the one anomaly that caused me to say almost all of my testing. The very first Chao that was already in the TCG for this save file had 255 luck and intel alleles, while no other Chao that were hatched in that TCG did. They all had 0 for those alleles. I, of course, have ideas that could explain this, but I'll go over them later. Regardless, egg transport testing also yielded the same results as Sonic Pinball Party. Once hatched in a GameCube garden, the Chao did not have 255 luck or int stats or alleles. It was time to go back to Sonic Advance 1 and test version 1 of the TCG. Revisiting my copy of Sonic Advance 1 with a fresh save and a better idea of, well, everything that I've mentioned so far, I ran my tests and was quite pleased with the results. After running multiple iterations and using multiple fresh saves to confirm, results showed that any Chao hatched inside TCG version 1 on Sonic Advance 1 had 255 luck and intelligence stat grades as well as alleles. I then confirmed that these Chao are able to pass those alleles onto their children, regardless of which version of SA2B is used. As expected, eggs bought in the TCG and transported to the GameCube, then hatched, do not have grade 255 in either stat nor their alleles. I can only conclude that my initial testing from before I began meticulously documenting my methods and progress was flawed. I'm willing to bet that I mistakenly based my initial conclusions on eggs that were bought from the TCG and then hatched in a GameCube garden. Or perhaps it was even something as simple as being up too late and thinking I was testing Sonic Advance 1 when I wasn't. Whatever the case, 6 days of knowledge made all the difference and allowed me to correct not only myself, but years of inaccuracies and vague claims along the way.
#worth it.
Additionally, I can also confirm that the means to obtain TCG version 1 Chao, including Jewel Chao, and then transfer them to Chao saves on the HD versions of SA2B do exist. This can be done using actual hardware such as a homebrewed Wii, and it can also be done purely through emulation of your personal copies of the games, in combination with some amazing tools made by some amazing people online, like the ones I mentioned at the very start. Video game preservation is important. If you have the means, always back up your physical copies of games and your save data. In conclusion, if a player has the means, the highest possible inheritable luck and intelligence grades using TCG version 1 and the GameCube version of SA2B are 255 and 255, and if a player had the means, know-how, and desire, the same applies to the HD versions of SA2B. Now, as mentioned previously, testing of the save file that I was given for Sonic Advance 2 was thrown out due to an anomaly, being that the initial already hatched Chao inside the TCG on that save file had 255 luck and int alleles, whereas all subsequent Chao hatched in that TCG did not. An explanation for why this happened could be as simple as said Chao originally in fact being from Sonic Advance 1, then being transported onto the original owner's copy of SA2B, then being transported onto their Sonic Advance 2 save. However, it's equally possible that said Chao was edited using cheats, or that, for some reason, only the first Chao hatched in Sonic Advance 2 has 255 luck and int alleles. I don't think that this is likely, but it's possible. Put simply, there's quite a few possibilities here, but with confirmation of Sonic Advance 1's results combined with how inconvenient it is to unlock the TCG on a fresh save of Sonic Advance 2, it can be argued that for the purposes of this line of research, there's very little reason to investigate this anomaly. However, for any Chao breeders who only have access to Sonic Advance 2 on the GBA and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube, it can be argued that this potentially matters. Therefore, I encourage anyone with the drive and the means to test this to do so, as there's no guarantee I'll ever get around to it. Hey everybody, it's Calmer here from the editing bay this time. If it wasn't obvious by now, this took multiple days to record. It actually took about a week and a half due to a combination of vocal cord strain, allergies, and my audio being a little weird towards the end of the script. Point is, I know my voice has sounded kind of scratchy here and there throughout the video. It's about to do it again here in this second part of this segment, but it'll clear up in a couple of minutes. I had some tea that I was drinking while I was recording these lines, so that definitely helped. Anyway, just wanted to give you all a little heads up. Let's get back to the second of the two loose ends. Finally, in my testing the Tiny Chao Garden section of my write-up, I displayed a bit of hesitance regarding the classification of just 2 versions of the TCG. It's my understanding that the reason for simplifying it to 2 versions centers around features being added, and now potentially the fact that only, quote, version 1, featured in Sonic Advance 1, Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2, and SA2B itself, yields Chao with 255 luck and int alleles. However, My hesitance has to do with something I purposely glossed over while explaining the results of my TCG testing. Eggs that were transported from the TCG into GameCube gardens and then hatched. As you can imagine, I was mainly checking these eggs and Chao for their luck and int alleles, but I observed something else. Among them were some ABC Chao, and their luck and int stat grades did not match any of my previously established SA2B ABC patterns. For example, ABC Chao brought into the Chao Garden as eggs from TCG version 1, using Knuckles, displayed new luck and int stats, such as 168 and 0, whereas we've already established that any ABC Chao that aren't preset or failsafe should come out as 0 and 0 for Knuckles. Tails, on the other hand, under the exact same variables, showed TCG version 1 ABC eggs hatching into Chao with various different luck and int grades, some reaching as high as 251, some as low as 1. Intrigued, I again used Tails with Sonic Advance 2's TCG, fished for ABC eggs, and got varied but different results than Sonic Advance 1's eggs, such as 86 and 113, or 129 and 154. Finally, I had Tails pull ABC eggs from Sonic Pinball Party's TCG, and was mildly shocked to see that every single one had 208 luck and 0 intel. Overall, my research on the luck and intelligence stats of ABC eggs transported from the TCG and then hatched in SA2B is utterly incomplete as of writing, as it quickly became apparent that there were a tedious amount of potential variables at play. For the time being, the evidence that I did collect and record indicates that although there are allegedly, quote, 2 versions of the TCG, there could still be differences between, say, ABC eggs transported from Sonic Advance 2 versus ABC eggs transported from Sonic Pinball Party, on a per-character and potentially per-garden basis, even though it is alleged that both games use, quote, version 2 of the TCG. When combined with the already clear differences and findings from, quote, version 1 on Sonic Advance 1, it is unknown if any players or mod creators would benefit from continuing this line of research, as anyone reaching back to the TCG on the GBA would likely only do so in order to get legitimate Jewel Chao and or legitimate 255 luck and intel Chao for breeding purposes, both of which can easily be accomplished with the Sonic Advance 1 TCG. As with the previous loose end though, it can be argued that for niche cases, this could matter to someone, and therefore anyone with the drive and means to test this should do so. I admit that I'm interested, but there's simply no guarantee that I'll get to it before someone else does. Contrary to what this research indicates, I do have a life. I've spent a boatload of time on this already, and in case there was any question, no, I didn't get paid for doing any of this. Being an at-home independent contractor is hard, now that the quarantine years are behind us. Hopefully the results of my research, testing, data compilation, and consolidation here will finally ensure that this all turns into easily accessible public knowledge in the SA2B and Chao breeding communities, and that older and newer players alike will never have to sift through buried forum posts with unconfirmed or unsubstantiated claims. I largely refuse to believe that I'm the first to have discovered even a single part of these findings, as, in the end, I'm just a player who chased a vague claim. Additionally, I'd be remiss to not mention that in the end, I'm well aware that for many players out there who already alter their Chao Garden mechanics with mods, as well as use editors to create whatever Chao they want, these findings don't matter. I use mods too, and I in fact highly recommend them to anyone who wants to play Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on Steam, like I do. I personally don't allow my mods to change any Chao breeding mechanics though, and I only used editors specifically to view stats for this research. It's simply my own personal preference to keep my Chao, quote, legitimate for my current save file. With that in mind, I'm equally sure that there are also some players out there like me, as well as players who cannot or will not use mods or editors, so hopefully these findings are of use to them in their Chao breeding journeys. Whether to let them know what's legitimately possible for them based on which version or versions they have access to, or to help them net whichever A-grade Chao they want when they start their Chao save data. Furthermore, if anyone has trouble replicating these results, or has thoroughly documented proof that can be replicated step by step which expands upon or contradicts any of these findings, absolutely feel free to reach out to me personally so I can attempt to verify your findings and or correct my own. These are purely the results of my testing, meaning that if there's some weird, unaccounted for mechanic that I'm not aware of, someone else's results of the exact same tests could be different. The same goes for the loose ends I mentioned. While I couldn't possibly attach every photo I have documenting my findings, I at least absolutely have them on hand for reference. As for the preset Chao stats and black market ABC Chao stats, I have provided them in full and can attest to having checked them multiple times for accuracy. That said, I am human, so errors are possible, but unlikely. Seriously, I check them over and over. Last but far from least, enormous thanks to the Chao Island community for not only all of the work they've put in over the years that allowed me to comfortably revisit one of my childhood games 22 years later, but also for actively encouraging, supporting, and thanking me for updates on my findings. Equally enormous thanks to, and I'm sorry if I pronounce any of your usernames wrong, I have only ever read them, I have never heard them, Fruity, Chrysistu, Justin113D, Shadatic, and all of the other mod creators who have made this game better over the years, especially those of you on Game Banana. I could not have conducted this research without your creations. Please consider supporting these people and or their communities if you found any of this useful. And because I know someone's going to ask if I don't say it, if you're wondering how to support me, I'm a moderator for various places across Twitch, Discord, and YouTube. Consider visiting any of the channels listed in my About Me section over at twitch.tv/calmer_/about. It's very important. Don't forget the underscore. And if you want to directly thank me, there should be an !tip chat command on my channel that will allow you to do so. Hey YouTube viewers, we're going off script here since that was actually the end of what I had written out for this video. So if this doesn't sound as polished or succinct as the rest, that's why. I just wanted to jump in here at the end and take a moment to first thank anyone who actually watched this entire video. I know it ended up being really long compared to the super simple and very modern Sea of Thieves ones I have on my channel. So if you really did watch or listen to this entire thing, I hope you took my advice and did it while having a snack or a drink. Or maybe you're like me and just put long-form YouTube videos on in the background while you do other stuff. Either way, feel free to flex in the comments if you seriously got all the way through. I want to recognize those of you who did. Secondly, I want to reiterate something that I briefly touched on in the video, which is video game preservation. Yeah, I'm serious about that. If you have the means, definitely look into all the ways available to back up your personal copies of old games as well as your save data. You know, do some research and look up reliable ways to do it. Not that long ago, I managed to back up my childhood Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow games and their save data, and then took it a step further and even managed to transfer those Pokemon, including my official Gen 1 Nintendo Event Mew, all the way into Pokemon Home. Yeah, you heard me. I said original childhood Gen 1 Pokemon to the Switch. So yeah, video game preservation is definitely worth it. And sometimes it lets you do some really cool stuff, like that. I also just wanted to reiterate that this research and video were very obviously focused on practical application of the things I covered, and that was very intentional. This was never for covering why any of this happens the way it does in these games. It was simply meant to state what happens and how to get those results as a normal player. You know, if you want to look into the code of the games and wax poetic about how all these values are generated and the rate at which they're generated, that's fantastic. My focus was on what can the average player achieve within the confines of those values. The final thing I wanted to jump in with is sort of circling back to video game preservation. I don't know how many of you know, but back in the day, there were event Chao, like the Tails, Knuckles, and Amy Chao available. And allegedly, according to some web archived evidence from Sega themselves, there were 3 other event Chao, namely the Shiny Tails Chao, the Shiny Sonic Chao, and the Shiny Shadow Chao. Known in Japanese as the Suya Suya versions of these character Chao, they were only given out at special events in Japan, such as the 18th Next Generation World Hobby Fair. The Chao community at large thankfully has legitimate ways to obtain and distribute the Tails, Knuckles, and Amy Chao, thanks largely in part to video game preservation efforts. Even I currently have legitimate copies of all 3 of them. But legitimate versions of these Suya Suya event Chao, tragically, as of the time I'm making this video anyway, have yet to be found. They're currently lost media, so as I end this video, I'd like to put out the call to anyone out there, especially those who may know anyone who would have been involved with or in attendance of Japanese events, such as the 2003 18th Jisadai Next Generation World Hobby Fair, to please reach out if you can help confirm anything about these 3 missing event Chao, or even lead us to distribution copies of them. At this time, it's generally assumed by the community that if the Shiny Tails Chao does exist, it may not have any difference in its stat grades when compared to a regular Tails Chao, but still, we can't be certain. However, according to a Japanese source, it's alleged that the Shiny Sonic Chao and the Shiny Shadow Chao both began with 2,000 points in their run stats, meaning that since they were not Immortal Chaos Chao like the other event Chao, they could reincarnate and potentially end up with run stats higher than were ever thought legitimately possible. Their actual stat grades, alleles, and level values are unknown, just like Shiny Tails, meaning that even when artificially created using Chao editors, no one would know what values to assign to those fields in order to perfectly recreate them. So please, help spread the word that video game preservationists and Chao enthusiasts alike are searching for these lost Chao. Hypothetically, in a best-case scenario, all we need is to reach the eyes and ears of one person, a single person who worked these events and has a copy of whatever disc, cartridge, or software was used to distribute these Chao, so that we can confirm their base values, preserve them online, and give them a home in players' Chao gardens everywhere. Alright, my voice is pretty tired now. So, once again, thanks for watching. If you found this video useful or enjoyable, feel free to leave a like or a comment just to let me know you did. If you disliked it, go ahead and leave a dislike. If you want to reach out to me, hit me up online, you know where to find me. Otherwise, be kind to each other, have fun, stay safe, and I'll catch you all in the next one.